Subscribe to StoryLab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Last Sunday. Scott Cunningham stood in his brother's backyard, watching Kevin flip burgers on the grill while Monica chased their two kids around the swing set. The September sun cast long shadows across the grass, and for a moment, Scott allowed himself to feel normal. Not like a man who'd spent the last 15 years in the shadows, collecting secrets that could topple governments. "You're doing that thing again," Jennifer said, sliding her hand into his. His wife had a way of reading him that unnerved and comforted him in equal measure. "What thing?" "That surveillance thing. You're cataloging exits and sight lines instead of enjoying the party." She squeezed his hand. "Kevin's worried about you. Says you've been distant." Scott pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "Just a lot on my mind with work. The consulting business that requires you to disappear for weeks at a time." Jennifer's voice carried an edge. She'd married him knowing his past with the CIA, but she didn't know he'd never really left. The consulting firm was his cover, and she'd stopped asking questions years ago, a silent agreement that kept their marriage intact. Kevin walked over, 2 beers in hand. At 35, he had an easiness about him that Scott envied. Kevin taught history at the local high school, coached Little League, and had never seen the inside of a black site. He'd built the life their father always wanted for both of them. "Remember when Dad used to burn the burgers every 4th of July? Kevin laughed, handing Scott a beer. Mom would pretend they were perfect, then feed them to the neighbor's dog when he wasn't looking. Scott smiled at the memory. Their father had been a factory worker in Detroit, their mother a nurse. Both gone now, Dad to a heart attack, Mom to cancer. They'd wanted simple lives for their sons. Only one of them had delivered. "Uncle Scott, watch this." 7-year-old Emma launched herself from the swing, landing in a forward roll. Scott's heart seized, a reflex from too many years of expecting danger. But she popped up grinning, arms raised in victory. 10 out of 10, Scott called out, and Emma beamed. Monica appeared at Kevin's side, and Scott noticed the way his brother's face softened. 15 years of marriage, and Kevin still looked at her like she was the only person in the room. Monica Pennington had been Kevin's high school sweetheart, the girl who'd waited for him through college and believed in him when he wanted to quit his teaching degree. "Scott, Jennifer, we want to tell you together," Monica said, her hand finding Kevin's. "We're pregnant. Number 3, coming in April." Jennifer squealed and hugged Monica while Kevin grinned like an idiot. Scott shook his brother's hand, then pulled him into a hug. "Congratulations, man. Another kid to torment you." "Couldn't be happier," Kevin said, and Scott knew he meant it. That night, driving home, Jennifer was quiet. Scott glanced at her, saw tears on her cheeks. "Hey, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. It's just seeing them so happy. Kevin's got this beautiful life, and I wonder." She trailed off. "Wonder what?" "If we have that. If you weren't always leaving. If we could have kids, and I wouldn't worry every day that they'd lose their father to whatever the hell you really do." Scott pulled over, put the car in park. He took Jennifer's face in his hands. "I'm getting out. I've been working on an exit strategy. 1 more operation, maybe 2, and I'm done. We can have all of that. I promise." She searched his eyes, wanting to believe him. "You mean it?" "I mean it. After this next one, I'm out for good." He meant it too. But the next morning, Peter Gross called with a classified briefing, and Scott learned about a Russian intelligence network that had been operating in the U.S. for 20 years. A network that needed someone to go deep to penetrate their Moscow headquarters. Someone expendable enough that if it went wrong, the agency could deny everything. Someone like Scott Cunningham. 3 weeks later, he kissed Jennifer goodbye, told her he'd be back in a month, and boarded a plane to Berlin. From there, a complicated series of dead drops and false identities took him to Moscow, where he became Simon Kozlov, a corrupt logistics coordinator for a shipping company with ties to organized crime. It took him 6 months to get noticed by the FSB, another month to get recruited as an asset, then 3 months embedded in their financial intelligence division, feeding them enough real information to maintain his cover while extracting everything he could about their American operations. He'd identified the network, 10 former FSB agents, all officially retired and relocated to the United States under deep cover identities. They ran legitimate businesses, had American families, paid taxes. But they maintained a sleeper network, waiting for activation. They smuggled intelligence, laundered money, and eliminated problems from Moscow, all while looking like model citizens. Scott's mission was simple: identify all 10, document their operations, and extract. The agency would handle the arrests. Clean, surgical, no blowback. He'd been 96 hours from extraction when everything went to hell. The FSB had been running their own internal investigation, paranoid about a mole. Scott had been careful, but someone had been more careful. They'd traced his communications, unraveled his cover, and connected Simon Kozlov to Scott Cunningham. And then they'd found his family. The Butyrka prison sat like a scar on Moscow's landscape. They dragged Scott there at 3 a.m., thrown him in his solitary. For 2 days, they'd left him alone with his thoughts, a psychological technique he recognized from his own training. When the door finally opened, it wasn't a guard who entered. General Alexei Volkov walked in like he owned the room, because in this place he did. Silver-haired, mid-60s, with the kind of calm that came from decades of breaking men. "Mr. Cunningham," he said in perfect English. "Or should I say, Simon Kozlov? Or perhaps one of your other names. You've had so many." Scott remained silent, running calculations. How much did they know? How much could he salvage? Nothing to say? That's fine. Volkov pulled up a chair, sat backwards on it. "We know who you are. We've known for 3 weeks. We let you continue because we wanted to see how deep your network went." He smiled. "Deeper than we thought. Your agency has been quite busy." Scott's mind raced. 3 weeks. Everything he'd sent back was compromised. Every contact burned. "But none of that matters now," Volkov continued. "What matters is making an example, showing the Americans what happens when they infiltrate our operations." He pulled out a tablet, swiped through images. "You have a brother, yes? Kevin Cunningham, high school teacher in Michigan. Wife Monica, daughter Emma, son Lucas. Quite a lovely family." Scott's blood turned to ice. "Had a lovely family, I should say." Volkov turned the tablet around. The images would haunt Scott forever. His brother's house, or what remained of it. Crime scene photos, body bags, police tape, news headlines about a home invasion gone wrong, an entire family slaughtered. 10 of our retired agents back home," Volkov said. "They needed practice. Your brother and his family provided excellent training. We even documented their methods for future reference." Scott lunged, but chains caught him short. Volkov didn't even flinch. "You see, Mr. Cunningham, we don't just punish our enemies. We eradicate everything they love, everyone they love, and then we make them live with it." Volkov stood. "You'll rot here. Years from now, when you're forgotten, when your wife has moved on, when even your agency has erased you from their records, you'll still remember that your curiosity, your ambition, your mission, it killed them all." Volkov left, and Scott sagged against his chains, grief and rage consuming him in equal measure. His brother's smile, Emma's laugh, Monica's kindness, all of it erased because of him. Then, faint in his ear, a familiar voice to the microtransceiver they hadn't found. "Son, a riot is scheduled for midnight. You have a 24-hour exfil window." Peter Gross, his handler, his mentor, the only father figure he had left. Scott's grief crystallized into something harder, colder. Volkov had made a mistake. He told Scott exactly how many men had killed his family. He'd given him their location. And now Scott had 24 hours to disappear. 24 hours. 10 men. The math was simple. That's 2.4 hours for each man. Scott smiled in the darkness. It was more than he needed. Chapter 2. The Extraction. The riot started exactly at midnight with a guard scream. Scott heard the chaos bloom through the prison. Shouts, crashes, the distinctive crack of homemade weapons against bone. Peter had promised a distraction, and the old man always delivered. Scott waited, counting seconds. The microtransceiver in his molar was silent now, but Peter's timing had been perfect. The guard rotation would change in 90 seconds. The door's electronic lock would malfunction in 45. The prison's backup generator would fail in 30. 20 seconds. The lights went out, and Scott moved. He'd spent 2 days studying the chains, finding the weakness where Soviet-era metal met modern welding. He'd worked the joint loose with his shoulder, abrading skin down to meat, but pain was just information now. The chain snapped. Scott caught it before it clattered, his body remembering training from 2 decades ago. The door buzzed, the lock disengaging on schedule. He slipped into the corridor, grabbed the riot baton from the floor where Peter's asset had left it, and moved. 3 guards between him and the maintenance tunnel. The first never saw him coming, a precise strike to the temple, and the man crumpled. The second turned, and Scott drove the baton into his solar plexus, then brought it down on his collarbone. The third was reaching for his radio when Scott's arm wrapped around his throat, cutting off air and blood flow. 12 seconds, and the guard went limp. Scott stripped the uniform from the second guard, closest to his size, and kept moving. The maintenance tunnel was exactly where Peter's intelligence said it would be, hidden behind a false wall panel in the boiler room. Scott slipped through as the riot peaked, guards rushing past him toward the cell blocks. The tunnel ran 200 meters, emerging in a utility building outside the prison walls. Peter had left clothes, documents, a phone, and 50,000 rubles in a waterproof bag behind the third pipe junction. Scott changed quickly, burning his prison uniform in the building's incinerator. The phone had one contact, home. Scott dialed. About damn time. Peter's voice was gruff with relief. You're 40 minutes behind schedule. Had to stop for souvenirs. Where are you? Safe house, 3 miles east. Cars in the lot, blue Lada, keys under the bumper. You remember how to drive in Moscow. Like riding a bike. What's the exit plan? Complicated. The FSB has your face plastered everywhere. Called you a terrorist. We've got a plane at a private airfield, but we need to move fast. How are you holding up? Scott thought of Kevin's face in those crime scene photos. I've been better. Did you verify the intel on the 10? A pause. Scott, we need to get you out first. We'll handle the network through proper channels. Did you verify the intel? Another pause, longer this time. When Peter spoke again, his voice carried resignation. Yes, all 10 are confirmed in the Detroit metropolitan area. They've been operating under deep cover for 12 to 20 years. Legitimate businesses, families, the whole 9 yards. We've had surveillance on them since your intel came through, but we can't move without State Department approval, and that's going to take. Send me everything. Names, addresses, routines, security, family members. Everything. Scott, listen to me. I know what you're thinking, and it's not. They killed my brother, Peter. They killed Monica and the kids. They did it because Volkov wanted to make a point. And you want me to wait for the State Department to figure out extradition. I want you to not throw your life away on revenge. We'll get them, but we have to do this right. Due process, rule of law. That's what separates us from them. Scott laughed, a harsh sound. Due process didn't save Kevin. Rule of law didn't stop 10 trained killers from executing a teacher and his family. You know what separates us from them, Peter? Nothing. Not anymore. God damn it, Scott. You can either help me, or I'll do it alone. But I'm doing it. Send me the files. The line went quiet for so long Scott thought Peter had hung up. Then, the car's phone has a secure app. Files will be there in 10 minutes. But Scott, if you do this, you're on your own. The agency can't protect you. I can't protect you. I know. And Jennifer, she'll find out. She'll know what you really are. That stops Scott cold. Jennifer. God, he hadn't even thought about how to tell her. How to explain that the man she married was about to become a murderer 10 times over. She'll understand, Scott said, not believing it. Will she? Or will she see you the same way she'll see them? Scott closed his eyes. Doesn't matter. I have to do this. Then God help you, son. Because I can't. Peter's voice cracked. The files are uploading now. Exfil is at the airfield in 4 hours. If you're not there, I have to assume you're dead or captured. Either way, I can't come back for you. I understand. Peter, thank you. For everything. Don't thank me. Just try to come back from this. Try to still be you when it's done. The line went dead. Scott found the Lada, started it, and pulled up the files while the engine warmed. 10 faces stared back at him. 10 lives detailed in clinical precision. Adrian Sanford, 52, real name, Andrei Sokolov. Former FSB colonel, owner of a successful import-export business in Dearborn. Wife, 3 grown children. Lives in a gated community with private security. Kyle Huber, 47, real name, Konstantin Volkov. Scott's stomach turned. Volkov, like the general. A relative? A message. Former Spetsnaz, then FSB enforcement. Runs a private security company. Divorced, no children. Lives alone in a fortified apartment. Trevor Waller, 43, real name, Timur Voronov. FSB Technical Operations. Now a systems administrator for a defense contractor. Married, 2 children. Standard suburban home in Rochester Hills. Dean Summers, 50, real name, Dmitry Semenov. FSB weapons specialist. Owns a gun range and tactical training facility in Novi. Married, 1 child. High security at business and home. Ron Sexton, 55, real name, Roman Sidorov. FSB interrogator, specialized in enhanced techniques. Now a business consultant. Divorced, lives with girlfriend in Birmingham. Standard security. Maurice York, 49, real name, Maxim Yudin. Adrian's second in command. Works at the same import-export business. Married, for children. Lies in Auburn Hills, modest security. Cecil Cohen, 45, real name, Sergei Kozlov. Scott grimaced. They'd used a variant of his cover name for the real agent. FSB, deep cover specialist. Accountant at a major firm. Married, 3 children. Appears completely normal, low security. Colin Rollins, 42, real name, Kirill Romanov. FSB Logistics and Transportation. Owns a trucking company. Single, no children. Lives in an industrial loft in Detroit, moderate security. Derek McDowell, 48, real name, Daniil Medvedev. FSB Cleanup Specialist. Runs a janitorial service that specializes in biohazard remediation. Married, no children. Standard home security. Howard Haas, 53, real name, Grigory Ivanov. FSB intelligence analyst and information broker. Works as a data analyst for a tech startup. Divorced, 1 adult child. Lives in a high-rise condo in downtown Detroit, building security only. Scott memorized every detail, cross-referencing locations and routines. The files included recent surveillance, when they left for work, where they ate lunch when they came home. Peter's team had been thorough. For hours until exfil. 24 hours until the window closed and every intelligence agency in the Western world would be looking for him. Scott put the car in gear and started driving toward the airfield. But his mind was already in Detroit, mapping routes, calculating timing, planning how to make 10 men pay for what they'd done to Kevin and his family. The flight was 6 hours. That gave him 18 hours on the ground. More than enough time. Chapter 3, Homecoming. Scott landed at a private airfield outside Windsor, Ontario, just across the river from Detroit. Peter had arranged a car, a nondescript Honda Civic, and a go bag with weapons, cash, and clean identity documents. There was also a burner phone with a single text message. I hope you find what you're looking for, but I doubt it will be peace. PG. Scott deleted the message and tossed the phone. He couldn't afford sentiment now. The drive across the Ambassador Bridge took 20 minutes, border security waving through his Canadian credentials without a second glance. It was 6 a.m. when Scott reached Detroit, the city waking up around him. He'd been gone for 9 months, but it felt like a lifetime. His first stop wasn't any of the targets. It was Kevin's house. The crime scene tape was gone, but the house stood empty, a for sale sign staked in the yard. Scott parked down the street and walked up, used Kevin's hidden spare key, still in the fake rock by the garden, to let himself in. The smell hit him first, cleaning chemicals trying to mask something worse. The carpet was gone from the living room. The hardwood underneath still stained dark. Scott's knees buckled, and he braced himself against the wall. This was where Kevin died, where Monica fought to protect her children, where Emma and Lucas's lives ended before they'd barely begun. Scott forced himself to walk through the house. Upstairs, he found Emma's room, her drawings still on the walls. One showed a stick-figure family, labels underneath, Daddy, Mommy, Emma, Lucas, and off to the side, Uncle Scott. He'd failed them. Failed to see the danger his life brought to everyone around him. Failed to protect the only family he had left. No, not the only family. Scott pulled out his personal phone, the one linked to his real life, and saw 47 missed calls from Jennifer. The most recent voicemail was from yesterday. Scott, I know you said no contact during your trips, but something's happened. Something terrible. Kevin and Monica and the kids, they're gone. Someone broke in and, God, Scott, please call me. I need you. I'm staying at the Marriott downtown because I can't be in our house alone. Please come home. Her voice broke at the end, and Scott felt something crack in his chest. Jennifer didn't know about his real work, didn't know the murders were his fault. She thought she'd lost her brother-in-law and his family to a random tragedy. How could he tell her the truth? How could he not? Scott called her back. She answered on the first ring. Scott. Oh my God, Scott, where are you? I'm here. I'm home. Jennifer, I heard about Kevin. She started crying, great heaving sobs. It was so awful. The police said it was a home invasion, but nothing was taken. They just killed them all and left. Who does that? Who kills a whole family for no reason? There's always a reason, Scott said quietly. Listen, I'm going to come get you, but there's something I need to tell you first. Something I should have told you a long time ago. What are you talking about? The consulting business, it's not real. It never was. I work for the CIA. I have for the last 15 years. I was on a mission in Moscow, and I was compromised. Kevin and his family, they were killed because of me. Because of what I do. To punish me. The silence stretched so long Scott thought she'd hung up. Then, your CIA? Yes. And Kevin was killed because of your work? Yes. Is that it? Is that all you have to say to me? Scott closed his eyes. I'm sorry, doesn't even begin to cover it. I know that. But I need you to understand something else. The men who did this, 10 of them, they're here, in Detroit. And I'm going to kill every single one of them. Tonight. Scott, you need to stay away from me. After tonight, the authorities will be looking for me. I'll be wanted for multiple murders. You need to be somewhere safe, somewhere with people who can vouch that you had no knowledge of any of this. Go to your sisters in Chicago. Right now, you're talking about murder, about revenge. I'm talking about justice, the kind the law can't deliver. And then what? You go to prison? You die? What about us? Scott looked at Emma's drawing, at the stick figure labeled Uncle Scott, standing apart from the family. Always apart. Always separate. There is no us. Not after this. I'm sorry, Jennifer. For everything. For lying to you. For the life I couldn't give you. For dragging you into this nightmare. You deserve so much better. Don't do this, she whispered. Don't throw your life away. My life was thrown away the moment they killed Kevin. This is just finishing what they started. He softened his voice. I love you. I need you to know that. Everything else was a lie, but that was always real. Scott. He hung up, powered off the phone, and removed the battery. Jennifer would be safe. She'd tell the FBI everything, and they'd hunt him, but at least she'd be clear of this. Scott went to Kevin's home office, found what he was looking for, the photo album from their childhood. He took one picture, Kevin and him at age 10 and 13, arms around each other's shoulders, gap-toothed grins at Tigers game. He pocketed it, then left the house for the last time. It was 7 a.m., 18 hours left. Scott drove to a storage unit he'd rented years ago under a false identity, his emergency cache. Inside were weapons, ammunition, tactical gear, and untraceable electronics. He geared up methodically, Glock 19 with suppressor, backup revolver, combat knife, zip ties, first aid kit, lock-picking tools. He set up a command center in the unit, using a laptop with military-grade encryption to access the surveillance feeds Peter's team had compiled. All 10 targets were creatures of habit, which would make this easier or harder, depending on whether they'd been alerted to his presence. Scott pulled up the security briefing on Adrian Sanford, the leader. Adrian would be the hardest to reach, but also the most important. He needed to save Adrian for last, extract everything he knew about the operation, about who gave the orders, about how Kevin's family had died. He started planning, mapping each target's location and routine, calculating travel times and optimal windows. The work focused him, channeled the grief, and rage into something cold and precise. His phone buzzed. The burner Peter had provided. One new message from an unknown number. I know what you're planning. I can help. LS. LS. Scott ran through every contact, every asset he'd ever worked with. Nothing clicked. Another message. Les Stafford. I was part of the original operation that sent you to Moscow. They burned me too. Meet me. You'll need what I have. Scott hesitated. This could be a trap, an attempt by the FSB or even the CIA to bring him in. But if Stafford was real, if he'd been burned by the same operation. A third message. I know you don't trust easily. Neither do I. That's why I've been living in your storage unit's rafters for the last 3 hours. Don't bother looking up. I'm gone now. But I left you something. Check the northeast corner behind the toolbox. If you want my help, be at the old Tiger Stadium ruins at 8 p.m. Come alone. Scott spun, weapon drawn, scanning the unit. Empty. But when he checked the northeast corner, he found a USB drive taped behind the toolbox. He plugged it into his laptop, half expecting malware. Instead, he found detailed files on all 10 targets, far more detailed than what Peter had provided. Financial records, communication intercepts, family vulnerabilities, security protocols. Everything he needed to get to each man efficiently. More than that, there were files on Volkov, on the chain of command, on a bigger network that extended beyond the 10 men in Detroit. At the bottom of the directory was a video file labeled Watch ME First. Scott opened it. A man appeared on screen. Early 50s, graying hair, hard eyes. Les Stafford. Mr. Cunningham, Stafford said. If you're watching this, you've made it home, and you're planning something catastrophically stupid. Good, because I've been waiting for someone to have the balls to finish what should have been done years ago. The 10 men who killed your family are just the tip of the spear. There are 40 more assets in the U.S., another 30 in Canada, 50 in Europe. This network has been operating for 25 years, and your agency knows about it. They've always known. But taking them down would cause a diplomatic nightmare. So they've been sitting on it, managing it, using it for their own intelligence gathering. Scott's blood ran cold. Stafford continued. Your brother's family was killed to send a message, yes, but also to tie up a loose end. Kevin Cunningham wasn't just a teacher. 3 years ago, he discovered something, a financial irregularity at his school. The new athletic director was laundering money through the booster club. Kevin reported it. The athletic director was Maurice York's son-in-law. Scott's hands clenched. They'd killed Kevin's entire family over high school corruption. York couldn't eliminate just Kevin, too obvious. So he waited, gathered the other 9, and when you got burned in Moscow, Volkov gave them the perfect cover. Make it look like retaliation for your mission. Tie up the loose end, send a message, and keep the network secure. 2 birds, 1 stone. Stafford leaned closer to the camera. So here's what I'm offering. I'll help you kill all 10. But in exchange, you help me burn down the entire network. Every asset, every handler, every bureaucrat who covered this up. We don't just get revenge, Cunningham. We get justice. Real justice. The kind that leaves bodies and ruins careers. The video ended. Scott sat back, processing. His mission had just expanded from 10 men to potentially hundreds. The scope was insane, the risks catastrophic. He'd be declaring war not just on a Russian intelligence network, but on elements within his own agency. He thought of Jennifer, already lost to him, of Kevin and Monica and the kids, their lives stolen for something as petty as school corruption. Of every other family these people had destroyed in service of their shadow war. Scott checked his weapons, loaded fresh magazines, and made his decision. He'd meet Les Stafford at 8 p.m., and then he'd burn all down. But first, he had 10 men to kill. Chapter 4. First Blood. Scott chose his first target carefully. Howard Haas, the information broker. In his former life as Grigory Ivanov, he'd been the FSB's data analyst, the man who found patterns others missed. Now he worked as a data analyst for a tech startup in downtown Detroit, living in a high-rise condo with minimal security. More importantly, Howard would have information. Computer files, encrypted communications, records of the network's operations. Scott needed that intelligence before the others knew he was coming. At 2 p.m., Scott entered the building using stolen credentials from a food delivery service. He rode the elevator to the 19th floor, found Howard's unit, and picked the lock in 40 seconds. The condo was empty. Howard would be at work for another 3 hours. Scott spent that time preparing. He cloned Howard's laptop, downloaded every file, installed a keylogger, and set up a camera in the living room. Then he settled into the coat closet to wait. Howard Haas arrived home at 5:17 p.m., carrying Chinese takeout and whistling something off-key. He was a small man, soft around the middle, with wire-rimmed glasses and thinning hair. He looked like someone's accountant uncle, not a Russian intelligence asset. Scott let him get comfortable, let him sit down with his food, and pull up Netflix. Then he stepped out of the closet, weapon raised. "Don't move. Don't scream. Hands on the table where I can see them." Howard froze, chopsticks halfway to his mouth. His eyes went wide, then narrowed as recognition hit. "You're dead. Volkov said you were locked in Buturka for life." Volkov was wrong about a lot of things. Scott moved closer, gun steady. "We're going to have a conversation, Howard. How it goes depends entirely on you. I don't know anything. I just analyze data. You analyze everything. You're the network's memory. Every communication, every operation, every target. It all goes through you." Scott pulled up a chair, sat backwards on it, gun never wavering. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything about Kevin Cunningham's murder. Who ordered it, who carried it out, what the exact sequence was. Then you're going to give me every password, every encryption key, every access code you have." Howard's hands trembled. "If I tell you that, they'll kill me. I'm going to kill you anyway. But I can make it quick, or I can make it last. Your choice." Something shifted in Howard's eyes. A calculation, a weighing of options. "What if I give you something better? What if I help you take down the whole network?" "Keep talking. I've been documenting everything for years. Insurance, in case Moscow ever decided I was expendable. I've got proof of every operation they've run in North America. Assassinations, blackmail, theft of classified information. I've got bank records, communications, even video evidence. Give me immunity, protection, and I'll hand it all over." Scott studied him. Howard wasn't panicking, wasn't begging. He was negotiating, which meant he had a backup plan, probably a dead man switch that would release his files if he didn't check in regularly. "You turn on them? After 20 years. They're burning us anyway. Why do you think I've been collecting insurance? Moscow's been consolidating, eliminating loose ends. Your mission accelerated their timeline, but it was always coming. Adrian's been taking out the oldest assets, making it look like accidents or illness. I would have been next within a year. Then why kill my brother's family? Why take that risk? Because Maurice York is an idiot who panicked when his son-in-law got exposed. He convinced Adrian it was necessary, that it would secure their position with Moscow, show they could handle problems quietly. But all it did was put a target on all of us." Scott leaned back. "You have 30 seconds to convince me you're more valuable alive than dead." Howard grabbed his laptop, fingers flying over the keys. He pulled up a file directory, thousands of documents organized by operation, date, and target. "Everything's encrypted with a 256-bit key that exists only in my head. Kill me, and you get nothing. Let me live, and I'll give you the key plus testimony that will put Adrian and the others away for life. You'll testify? Against your own network. They're not my network anymore. They're dead men walking, and they don't even know it. You're just the first of their problems." Howard's eyes were bright with fear and calculation. "There's a whistleblower in the CIA, someone high up who's been feeding information to a Senate investigation. When that breaks, every asset in North America is getting rolled up. I want to be on the right side of it." Scott considered. If Howard was telling the truth, he was more valuable as a witness than a corpse. But trusting a Russian intelligence asset went against every instinct. "Here's the deal," Scott said. "You give me the encryption key right now. You tell me everything about Kevin's murder. Then you disappear. I don't care where. If what you told me checks out, I'll send your evidence to the right people through a back channel. But if you're lying, if any of this is a setup, I will hunt you down and make you regret it." Howard hesitated, then nodded. "The key is a poem, Pushkin, the Bronze Horseman, lines 37 through 42 in the original Russian. The files are backed up on a server in Iceland. Access information is in a safe deposit box at Michigan National Bank, box 2847. The key is hidden in my office at work, taped under the third drawer of my desk. Scott memorized the information. Now tell me about Kevin. What Howard told him over the next hour made Scott's blood boil. The murder had been planned for weeks. Maurice York had coordinated with the other 9, turning it into a training exercise. They'd watched the house, learned the routines, waited for the perfect night. Then they'd gone in like professionals, fast, brutal, efficient. Kevin had tried to fight, had actually wounded one of them. Colin Rollins, a knife slash across the arm. Monica had called 911, but Dean Summers had jammed the signal. They'd killed Kevin first, then Monica, then hunted down the children who'd hidden in a closet. The whole operation took 12 minutes. They recorded it, Howard said quietly, from Moscow as proof. Adrian has the video on his personal server. Scott's hand tightened on his weapon. Who actually pulled the triggers? Kyle Huber shot Kevin. Ron Sexton shot Monica. The children, that was Cecil Cohen. He volunteered. Cecil Cohen, the accountant who looked completely normal. The one with 3 kids of his own. Where's Colin Rollins now? The one Kevin cut, probably at his trucking company. He works late most nights, managing routes. Scott stood, zip-tied Howard's hands and feet, and gagged him. Someone will find you tomorrow. Maybe. If your information checks out, you'll get your deal. If not, he left the threat hanging. He left Howard's condo at 6:45 p.m., mind already moving to the next target. But Howard's information had changed the calculus. If there was a CIA whistleblower, if there was a Senate investigation, then Scott's rampage might actually accomplish something beyond revenge. It might burn down the entire network. But first, he had to get at Colin Rollins. The trucking company sat in an industrial area of Detroit, surrounded by warehouses and freight yards. Scott watched from across the street, identifying security cameras and patrol patterns. Colin's office was on the second floor, lights still burning bright. At 8:30 p.m., the last employee left. Colin's truck remained in the lot, a black Ram 2500 custom lift kit, tinted windows. Scott waited another 20 minutes, then moved. He entered through a loading dock, picked the lock on the interior door, and climbed the stairs to the office level. Colin's door was unlocked, the man himself visible through the window, hunched over paperwork. Scott opened the door quietly, weapon up. Colin Rollins. Colin spun, hand diving for the desk drawer. Scott fired, the suppressed shot taking Colin in the shoulder. The man went down with a grunt, and Scott was on him, kicking the drawer shut before Colin could reach the gun inside. "You cut my brother," Scott said, hauling Colin up and slamming him into the wall. "He fought back, didn't he? Put a knife in you. I bet that pissed you off." Colin glared through the pane, blood seeping through his shirt. "Your brother was weak." They all were. Scott hit him a sharp jab to the ribs. "He was a teacher, a father, a good man. And you killed him for what? For covering up some laundering scheme? We killed him because he was a loose end. Because Maurice said so. Because that's what we do." Colin spat blood. "You think you're any different? You've killed how many people in your career? How many families destroyed for national security? You're just like us. I'm nothing like you." "Really? Then what's this? What are you doing right now?" Colin laughed, then coughed. "You're hunting us down, killing us one by one. That's not justice. That's revenge. That's exactly what we would do." Scott stepped back, shaken. Was Colin right? Had he become the very thing he'd spent his life fighting? No. The difference was intent. Scott killed to protect, to serve something larger than himself. These men killed for power, for money, for nothing but their own survival. "How many more of you knew about Kevin?" Scott asked. "All of us." Maurice needed everyone involved to spread the responsibility, to make sure no one could talk without implicating themselves. "And the video? Where's the original?" "Adrian has it. On his personal server, like Howard probably told you." Colin's eyes narrowed. "You've been busy tonight. Not busy enough." Scott raised his weapon. "Any last words?" "Yeah, we're not the only network. There are others, Chinese, Iranian, North Korean. You burn us down, you make room for something worse. At least we had rules. At least we had lines we wouldn't cross. You killed children. You crossed every line that matters. Scott fired twice, center mass. Collins slumped against the wall, eyes going glassy. Scott checked for a pulse, found none, then searched the office. He found records, communications, evidence of operations stretching back 15 years. He photographed everything with his phone, then wiped his prints and left. It was 9:10 p.m. He'd missed his meeting with Les Stafford, but something told him Stafford would understand. The man had been watching him, after all. He'd probably watched Scott enter Collins' building, would know exactly what had happened. Scott's phone buzzed, the burner. New message. Impressive. But we're running out of time. The others will know by morning. Meet me at the abandoned Packard plant, Building 11, midnight. We need to move fast. Scott typed back. How do I know you're not setting me up? You don't. But I'm the only friend you have left. And you're going to need me for what comes next. Scott stared at the message, then at the photo of him and Kevin he'd taken from the house. His brother smiled back at him, forever young, forever innocent. 2 down, Scott whispered. 8 to go. Chapter 5. The Partnership. The Packard plant loomed against the night sky, a rotting monument to Detroit's industrial past. Scott approached Building 11 cautiously, weapon drawn, senses heightened. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every sound could signal an ambush. He entered through a collapsed wall, picking his way through debris and rusted machinery. Moonlight streamed through gaps in the roof, creating patches of silver in the darkness. You're late. Les Stafford's voice came from the shadows above. Scott spun, tracking the sound, and found the man perched on a catwalk, perfectly positioned to cover the entrance. I was working. Stafford dropped down, a controlled fall that spoke of military training, and landed in a crouch. Up close, he looked harder than his video, scars visible on his hands and neck. Colin Rollins. Shot twice close range. Clean work. You've been following me since you left the storage unit. Someone has to watch your back. Stafford pulled out a tablet, brought up a map of Detroit. The others know by now. Howard's missed 2 check-ins. Colin's not answering his phone. Adrian will lock down the rest, pull them into secure locations. We need to move fast. Why should I trust you? Because I'm the only person who wants them dead as badly as you do. Stafford's eyes were cold. 3 years ago, I was running the operation that sent you to Moscow. I picked you because you were the best deep cover operative we had. But someone leaked your mission to Moscow, someone inside the agency. When you got burned, they tried to clean it up by burning me too. Made it look like I'd gone rogue, embezzled funds, sold secrets. I've been hiding ever since, digging into who betrayed us. And it goes higher than you think. Deputy Director Alan Alexander authorized the leak. He's been running his own operation, using the Russian network as a back channel for communications that bypass official oversight. When your mission threatened to expose the network, he sacrificed you to protect his asset. Scott's mind reeled. A deputy director selling out his own people? Why would he do that? Because the network isn't just Russian anymore. Over the years, Adrian and his people became double agents, feeding information to both Moscow and to Alexander's faction within the CIA. It's the perfect setup. They operate under Russian cover, but really they're working for a shadow group inside our own intelligence apparatus. A group that's been running unsanctioned operations for decades. And Kevin was collateral damage. Maurice York panicked about the investigation into his son-in-law, went to Adrian, and Adrian saw an opportunity. Kill your family, blame it on Moscow, and create a narrative that would justify locking you up forever. 2 problems solved. Stafford's jaw clenched. Alexander signed off on it. He authorized the hit on civilians to protect his network. Scott felt rage building, a white-hot fury that demanded release. Where's Alexander now? D.C., protected by the full apparatus of the intelligence community. We can't get to him directly, but we could destroy his network, expose his operations, and force him into the open. Stafford pulled up files on his tablet. I've been documenting everything: bank transfers, communication logs, operation records. Combined with what Howard gave you, we have enough to bring down Alexander and everyone connected to him. Then let's take it to the FBI, to Congress, to who? Alexander has been building this for 20 years. He has people everywhere. FBI, Justice Department, Senate oversight committees. We go through official channels, and the evidence disappears. Witnesses die in accidents. The whole thing gets buried. Stafford stepped closer. The only way to burn this down is from the inside. We kill the network assets, expose the operations, and make so much noise that Alexander can't hide anymore. Scott weighed his options. Trust Stafford and potentially walk into a trap, or go it alone and possibly miss the bigger picture. What's your plan? Stafford smiled grimly. Adrian's the key. He has the video of your brother's murder, the files on every operation, the communication logs with Alexander. We get to Adrian, we get everything. But he's locked down tight. Security team, safe room, the works. We can't just walk in. So we make him come to us. Exactly. We hit his people, one by one, until he has no choice but to move. Then we take him in transit. Stafford pulled up profiles of the remaining targets. Cecil Cohen, the child killer. He lives in a standard suburban home in Bloomfield Hills. Family man, coaches soccer, goes to church. Perfect cover. When does he die? Tonight. But we need to be smart about it. Make it public enough that Adrian knows we're serious, but controlled enough that we don't bring down law enforcement too fast. Scott studied Cecil's file. 3 kids, ages 7, 9, and 12. A wife who worked as a dental hygienist. They look like every other suburban family, happy and normal. His kids are innocent. We don't touch them. This is about justice, not revenge. Stafford met Scott's eyes. I know what you're feeling. I know you want to hurt him the way he hurt you. But that's not who we are. We're better than them. Scott thought about Colin's words. You're just like us. No, he wouldn't let revenge turn him into a monster. How do we get to him without involving his family? Cecil has a Wednesday night poker game. Every week, same location, a buddy's basement in Royal Oak. He leaves at 8 p.m., returns around 1 a.m. His route takes him through a construction zone on Woodward Avenue. No cameras, minimal traffic. Perfect ambush point. Scott checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. It's not Wednesday. Doesn't matter. We make him think there's an emergency, get him out of the house. I'll spoof a call from Adrian, tell him to meet at a secure location. He'll go armed, but he'll go alone. And then we make him tell us everything he knows about Kevin's murder. Who gave the exact orders, who planned the entry, who decided to kill the children. And then we end him. Scott nodded. Do it. Stafford made the call, voice-changing software, making him sound exactly like Adrian. Scott watched through a scope as Cecil's house lit up, bedroom light first, then the hall. Cecil appeared in the window, phone to his ear, nodding. 3 minutes later, he emerged from the house, got in his car, and drove off. Scott and Stafford followed in separate vehicles, maintaining distance. The construction zone was perfect. Concrete barriers are creating a maze, orange cones forcing traffic into a single lane. Stafford had positioned stolen barriers to funnel Cecil into a dead end. Cecil realized the trap too late. He slammed on his brakes, threw the car in reverse, but Scott's vehicle blocked his exit. Cecil grabbed a weapon from his glove box and bailed out, taking cover behind his car. Federal agents. Stafford called out, using a voice modulator to disguise his identity. Throw down your weapon. Fuck you. Cecil fired twice, bullets sparking off Scott's car. Scott circled, right while Stafford went left, classic pincer movement. Cecil was good. He'd been trained by the FSB, after all, but he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. When Scott fired a flashbang, Cecil was momentarily blinded. Stafford rushed in, kicked the weapon away, and zip-tied Cecil's hands. They dragged him to an abandoned garage nearby, cable-tied him to a chair. Cecil glared at them, fear masked by defiance. I know who you are, he said, looking at Scott. The brother. Come for revenge. I came for answers. Then justice. Scott pulled up a photo of Emma and Lucas on his phone, shoved it in Cecil's face. They were 7 and 5. You hunted them down like animals. What? Orders. Maurice wanted. I don't care what Maurice wanted. I want to know why you volunteered. Why you were the one who pulled the trigger on children. Cecil's mask slipped, and something cold appeared in his eyes. Because someone had to. Because leaving witnesses, even small ones, is sloppy. Because I'm a professional. Scott hit him a sharp blow to the jaw. You have 3 kids. How could you? My kids are safe. They'll grow up, have families, live full lives. Those children were compromised the moment your brother stuck his nose where it didn't belong. Their father's choices killed them, not me. Stafford grabbed Scott's arm, holding him back. He's goading you. Don't give him the satisfaction. Scott took a breath, forced himself to focus. Tell me about the planning. Who decided how it would go down? Over the next hour, they extracted everything. Adrian had planned the operation, assigning roles based on each asset specialty. Kyle Huber was the shooter. He'd killed Kevin. Ron Sexton handled Monica. He had experience with female targets. Cecil got the children because, as he chillingly explained, he had the stomach for it. The other 6 had provided support. Trevor Waller jammed communications. Dean Summers provided weapons. Maurice York coordinated. Colin Rollins drove. Derek McDowell handled cleanup. And Howard Haas analyzed the aftermath to ensure no evidence pointed back to them. And Alexander? Stafford pressed. What did the deputy director know? Everything. He approved the operation. Maurice went to Adrian. Adrian went to Alexander. Alexander said, do it, make it look Russian, and use it to keep Cunningham locked up. Cecil smiled through blood. Your own people gave the order. How does that feel? Scott stepped back, the full scope of the betrayal hitting him. His agency, his country, had sanctioned the murder of his brother's family. For what? To protect a shadow network? To keep dirty secrets buried? One more question, Scott said. The video. Where is it? Adrian's private server. Encrypted, biometric locked. You'll never get it. We'll see about that. Scott looked at Stafford. We done here? Stafford nodded. Cecil's eyes widened. Wait, we can make a deal. I'll testify against Alexander, against all of them. Scott fired once. Cecil slumped in the chair, his eyes going vacant. 3 down, Scott said. 7 to go. But Stafford was already on his phone, reading something that made him go pale. We have a problem. Adrian's moving. He's pulling everyone to a secure location, his warehouse in Dearborn. They're going to fortify, wait us out. How many will be there? All 7 remaining assets, plus Adrian's security team. Call it 20 people, heavy weapons, defensible position. Stafford looked at Scott. This just became a small war. Scott thought about Jennifer, about the life he'd already sacrificed, about Kevin and his family, about justice that felt like it was slipping away. Then we bring a war, Scott said. What do we need? Stafford smiled, savage and cold. I know a guy who owes me a favor, and he happens to run the biggest illegal arms cache in the Midwest. Chapter 6, The Arsenal. They met Stafford's contact at 3 a.m. in a warehouse near the river. A man called Santos Nunez, built like a brick wall with prison tattoos crawling up his neck. He didn't ask questions, just led them to a shipping container filled with enough firepower to start a small revolution. Military surplus, mostly, Santos said, gesturing at the racks. Some Eastern European, some homegrown. What's the job? 20 hostiles, fortified position, heavy resistance expected. Stafford ran his hands over an AR-15. We need suppressive firepower, breaching equipment, and body armor. Santos whistled low. You boys planning a war? Something like that. They loaded up. Rifles, shotguns, flashbangs, smoke grenades, tactical vests, and enough ammunition to hold off a small army. Santos threw in a drone with thermal imaging and a tablet to control it. On the house, he said. Les here saved my brother from a CIA black site. Figure I owe him. Back at a different safe house. This one a foreclosed home in Redford. Scott and Stafford planned their assault. The drone footage showed Adrian's warehouse as a fortress. Steel walls, reinforced doors, security cameras covering every approach. The 7 remaining assets were inside, along with a dozen hired security. Front assault is suicide, Stafford said, studying the layout. We need to draw them out, divide their forces, or we make them think we're not coming. Scott pulled up a file Howard had given him, a list of Adrian's business contacts. Adrian runs an import-export business. What if that business suddenly became very interesting to federal investigators? Stafford caught on immediately. We leak evidence of smuggling, maybe arms dealing. Get the FBI to raid the warehouse. They go in heavy. We slip in during the chaos. And then were federal agents caught in the crossfire. We put on FBI windbreakers, stay in the confusion, and take out our targets while everyone's busy shooting at each other. It was insane. It was also the only play they had. Scott called in the tip using an anonymous line, reporting suspicious activity at Adrian's warehouse, possible weapons smuggling, ties to foreign intelligence. He made it sound urgent, credible, like it came from a concerned citizen. The FBI took the bait. By 8 a.m., Scott and Stafford watched from a rooftop as federal vehicles surrounded the warehouse. Agents in tactical gear took positions, called for Adrian to surrender. "Here we go," Stafford said, handing Scott an FBI windbreaker. They'd stolen them from an evidence locker, would pass for federal agents in the chaos. The FBI breached with flashbangs. The warehouse erupted in gunfire, Adrian's people firing back through reinforced positions. The FBI returned fire, and the warehouse became a war zone. Scott and Stafford moved in from the rear, using the loading dock door that Adrian's people had left unguarded. They were all focused on the front assault. Inside was chaos, smoke, gunfire, shouting. Perfect cover. Trevor Waller was their first target, the tech specialist, holed up in the security room trying to wipe servers. Scott found him hunched over a keyboard, frantically deleting files. "Federal agent." Scott called, weapon up. "Hands where I can see them." Trevor spun, saw the windbreaker, and raised his hands. "Thank God. There are armed men." Scott shot him twice. Trevor fell back, blood spreading across his shirt, eyes wide with betrayal. Scott stepped over him, pulled the hard drives from the servers. Trevor had managed to delete some files, but not all. The evidence was secure. Stafford's voice came through the comms, second floor clear. "Got Dean Summers. That's 4 down. Copy." Moving to the administrative wing, Scott found Maurice York and Derek McDowell together, barricaded in an office. They were armed, watching the door, whispering urgently. Through the gap under the door, Scott could hear them. "Should have killed him in Moscow. Should have made sure. Volkov said he was secure. How are we supposed to know?" Scott kicked the door open, threw in a flashbang. The explosion disoriented them long enough for Scott to enter, weapons sweeping. Maurice was reaching for his gun, but Scott shot him in the hand, then the leg. Maurice screamed and went down. Derek lunged with a knife, but Scott sidestepped, caught his arm, and broke it at the elbow. Derek's scream joined Maurice's. Scott zip-tied them both, then dragged Maurice up by his collar. "This was your idea. The hit on Kevin. You started all of this." Maurice's face was twisted with pain and fear. He was going to expose everything. "My son-in-law would have gone to prison. My daughter would have lost everything. I did what I had to do. You killed children because you were too cowardly to face the consequences of your crimes." Scott's voice was ice. "Where's Adrian?" "Upstairs. Panic room. You'll never get to him. It's rated for 12 hours, blast-proof." Scott shot Maurice through the head, then did the same to Derek. 5 and 6. He met Stafford on the 3rd floor. The sounds of gunfire were dying down. The FBI was winning. Adrian's security team either dead or surrendering. They found the panic room door. Solid steel, biometric lock, no visible way to breach it. "Adrian." Scott called. "I know you're in there. I know you have a video. I know everything." Silence. "Alan Alexander sold you out. He's already preparing to sacrifice the network. You're a dead man either way. But if you come out now, if you help me expose him, I can guarantee you'll live long enough to see him go down." Still nothing. Stafford pulled out a shaped charge from his bag. "This'll take the door, but it'll be loud. FBI will investigate." "Do it." The explosion rocked the floor, and the door sagged inward. Scott and Stafford rushed in, weapons up, expecting resistance. Instead, they found Adrian Sanford sitting calmly at a desk, hands folded, a laptop open in front of him. "Mr. Cunningham," Adrian said in a cultured voice. "I've been expecting you." Scott's finger tightened on the trigger, but something made him pause. Adrian wasn't armed, wasn't reaching for a weapon. He looked almost resigned. "Where's Kyle Huber and Ron Sexton?" "Dead. The FBI killed them in the initial breach. You're too late for them." Adrian gestured at the laptop. But I have something better. The video, yes, but also files, communications, bank records. Everything you need to destroy Alexander and his entire operation. Why would you give that to me? Adrian smiled sadly. Because Alexander betrayed us first. 6 months ago, he tried to eliminate the network. Made it look like accidents, car crashes, heart attacks, suicides. He killed 12 of us before we figured out what was happening. I've been preparing for this ever since, collecting evidence, building a case. I just needed someone to deliver it to the right people. And I'm that someone. You have nothing to lose. Your career is over. Your wife is gone. Your family is dead. You're the perfect messenger. No agency can control you. No politician can compromise you. You'll see this through to the end because you have nothing left but revenge. Scott stared at him. This man who'd planned his brother's murder, who'd turned that horror into a training exercise. You could have walked away. Could have left Kevin alone. Maurice came to me. I saw an opportunity. And yes, I authorized it. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't expect mercy. Adrian pushed the laptop across the desk. But I want Alexander to pay. Take the evidence. Expose him. Burn it all down. That's worth more than my life. Stafford moved to the laptop, started examining the files. His eyes went wide. This is everything. Operations going back 30 years. Names, dates, authorization codes. Alexander's signature on dozens of illegal operations. This will bring down half the intelligence apparatus. Adrian nodded. Exactly. So kill me, Mr. Cunningham. Take your revenge. But make sure that laptop gets to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Make sure everyone knows what Alexander did. Scott raised his weapon, thinking of Emma's smile, of Lucas's laugh, of Kevin's kindness. This man had ordered their deaths for nothing but his own survival. But killing Adrian now fell hollow. The man wanted to die, wanted a quick end to avoid the consequences of his actions. No, Scott said, lowering his weapon. You're going to live. You're going to testify. You're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell, knowing you destroyed everything you built. That's justice. Adrian's face fell. You're making a mistake. Alexander will kill me before I can. Then we better move fast. Stafford was already calling someone, speaking urgently. Senator Kirsten McGuire. She's on the Intelligence Committee, clean as they come. She'll protect Adrian in exchange for his testimony. FBI agents were thundering up the stairs. Scott and Stafford shed their windbreakers, put their hands up as agents burst in. In the chaos, Stafford managed to pass the laptop to an agent he recognized, a woman named Tasha Bass, another burned operative Les had worked with. Get this to McGuire, Stafford whispered. Everything depends on it. Scott and Stafford were arrested, of course. Disarmed, cuffed, read their rights. But as they were let out, Scott saw Adrian being taken into custody, separately, heavily guarded. The man was smart. He'd survive long enough to testify if they moved fast enough. 7 of the 10 were dead. The other 3, Howard, Kyle, and Ron, were either in custody or dead at FBI hands. The mission was complete, but the war was just beginning. Chapter 7, Exposure. Scott and Stafford sat in an FBI interrogation room, a mirror on one wall, a camera in the corner. They'd been here for 6 hours, interviewed separately and together, asked the same questions 100 different ways. Scott stuck to a simple story. He'd come back to find his brother's killers, had evidence they were Russian intelligence assets, and had simply been doing his patriotic duty. The FBI wasn't buying it. You killed 6 people, the lead agent said. A woman named Rita Wilcox, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued. Executed them by the evidence. That's not patriotism. That's murder. They killed my brother and his family. They were foreign intelligence assets. I neutralized threats to national security. You're not a police officer. You're not even officially CIA anymore. You're a vigilante, and you're going to prison for the rest of your life. Scott said nothing. Let them talk. Let them threaten. Because outside this room, Tasha Bass was delivering Adrian's laptop to Senator McGuire. And when those files went public, everything would change. It took 36 hours. 36 hours of interrogation, threats, good cop/bad cop routines. Then Rita Wilcox entered the room with a different expression, confusion mixed with anger. What the hell did you do? She demanded. What are you talking about? The Senate Intelligence Committee just announced an emergency hearing. They're calling it a matter of grave national security. The Attorney General has been summoned. The Director of National Intelligence. And she paused. Deputy Director Alan Alexander has been suspended pending investigation. Scott allowed himself a small smile. That was fast. What do you know about this? Everything. And nothing. Depends on who's asking. Rita leaned across the table. I'm asking as someone who wants to understand what the hell is happening to my country. Because right now, it looks like senior intelligence officials have been running an illegal shadow network for decades. It looks like they sanctioned the murder of American citizens. And it looks like you and your friend Stafford are somehow at the center of it. We're victims, just like my brother, just like everyone else Alexander used and discarded. The door opened and a man entered, mid-50s, gray suit, the bearing of someone used to authority. Agent Wilcox, you're relieved. I'll take it from here. Rita looked like she wanted to argue, but she left. The man sat down, folder in hand. Mr. Cunningham, I'm Deputy Attorney General Peter Gross. Scott's head snapped up. Peter, in the flesh. His old handler smiled grimly. Surprise. I wasn't just your handler. I was building a case against Alexander for years. When you got burned in Moscow, I knew it was internal. I just couldn't prove it. Then you went on your rampage, and suddenly Adrian Sanford is offering to testify, and we have documentation of crimes that'll bring down Alexander and half his network. You used me. I gave you the tools to get revenge and get justice. Win-win, far as I'm concerned. Peter opened the folder. Here's the situation. Alexander is lawyering up, claiming he was running authorized operations, that everything had presidential approval through back channels. He's lying, but proving it will take time. Adrian Sanford is in protective custody, singing like a canary. His testimony, combined with the files he recovered, gives us enough to indict Alexander and 47 other individuals, some in the intelligence community, some in Congress, some in the military. The network. The network, yes. Plus Alexander's personal operation. Turns out he's been running unsanctioned regime change operations in South America, using the Russian assets as cutouts. Drug money, arms dealing, the whole dirty playbook. He was building his own intelligence apparatus, answerable to no one. Scott absorbed this. The scope kept expanding. First Kevin's murder, then the network, now global operations. What happens to me? That depends. Right now, you're looking at multiple counts of murder. Even with the national security angle, you killed American citizens on American soil. The Justice Department wants to make an example of you. But Senator McGuire is arguing you were acting as an intelligence operative conducting a sanctioned mission. She's claiming you were working under my direction to expose a rogue intelligence operation. It's a stretch, but with Adrian's testimony corroborating your story, we might sell it. You want me to lie? Say I was following orders. I want you to accept the cover story that keeps you out of prison and lets us take down Alexander. Peter leaned forward. Look, what you did was illegal. It was also necessary. The system failed you, failed your brother. You took matters into your own hands. And because of that, we're about to clean house in a way that wouldn't have been possible through official channels. So yeah, I'm offering you a lifeline. Take it, or spend the rest of your life in a cell. Your choice. Scott thought about Jennifer, about the life they could have had, about Kevin's kids, who'd never grow up, about all the other families destroyed by Alexander's operations. What about Les Stafford? Same deal. He testifies that you were both working under deep cover to expose the network. He gets immunity, protective custody, and a chance to disappear when this is over. And Adrian Sanford? Reduced sentence in exchange for testimony. He'll still die in prison, just not as soon. The other assets you didn't kill, Howard Haas, and any others we round up, similar deals if they cooperate. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was something, and it would destroy Alexander. I'll take the deal, but I want something in return. Peter raised an eyebrow. You're not exactly in a position to negotiate. Jennifer, my wife, she gets the truth, all of it, and she gets protection. If Alexander or anyone else tries to use her against me, I walk from the deal and tell the press everything. Done. Anything else? The video of Kevin's murder. I want it destroyed. Monica's family doesn't need to see that. No one does. Peter nodded slowly. I'll see what I can do. But the Senate committee might want it as evidence. Then they get a transcript. Not the video. Scott's voice was hard. That's non-negotiable. All right, I'll make it happen. Peter stood, offered his hand. Welcome back to the world, Scott. Or whatever's left of it. They shook, and Scott was led to a holding cell. 48 hours later, he and Stafford were released into federal protective custody, a safe house in Virginia, guarded by U.S. Marshals, while the Senate hearings played out on national television. Scott watched Adrian testify, watched him detail Alexander's crimes with clinical precision, watched Alexander sweat under questioning, his carefully constructed denials falling apart under evidence. Watched senators from both parties express outrage, demand accountability, promise reform. It was political theater, but it was also justice. Slow, bureaucratic, imperfect justice. Jennifer came to visit on the 5th day. They met in a conference room, marshals standing outside. She looked tired, older somehow, the events of the past weeks etched in lines around her eyes. They told me everything, she said without preamble. Peter Gross came to my sister's house, explained your real job, what happened to Kevin, what you did about it. Was any of it real? Us, I mean. All that was real. The job was a lie, but you, us, that was always true. She sat down heavily. I don't know if I can forgive you. For lying, for the secrets, for Kevin. Even knowing it wasn't directly your fault. I can't help but think if you'd been a teacher or an accountant or anything normal, he'd still be alive. You're right. He would be. And now you're asking me to what? Understand? Accept. I'm asking you to live your life. Forget about me, move on. You deserve better than this, better than me. Always did. Scott pushed an envelope across the table. Divorce papers. Already signed on my end. The house is yours, the bank accounts, everything. Start over, Jennifer. Find someone who can give you the life I never could. Tears streamed down her face. Just like that. 15 years, and you're just done? I'm done with the lies. Done with putting you in danger. Done with pretending I can be both the man you married and the man I really am. You deserve the truth, and the truth is I'm not coming back from this. Even if I stay out of prison, I'm not the person you fell in love with. Maybe I never was. Jennifer stood, grabbed the envelope. At the door, she paused. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, Scott. I really do. But I hope I never see you again. Then she was gone, and Scott was alone. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The Senate hearings lasted 3 weeks. Adrian Sanford testified for 12 hours, detailing decades of illegal operations. Howard Haas provided technical evidence, showing financial trails and communication networks. Les Stafford, granted immunity, explained how Alexander had built a shadow intelligence apparatus answerable only to himself. The evidence was overwhelming. Alexander and 47 others were indicted on charges ranging from conspiracy to murder to treason. The intelligence community was gutted, dozens of senior officials forced to resign. Congressional oversight was strengthened, new safeguards implemented. It was the biggest intelligence scandal in American history. Through it all, Scott remained in protective custody, testifying when called, otherwise watching the spectacle from his safe house. Peter Gross visited regularly, updating him on the investigation's progress. Alexander's going to flip, Peter said during one visit. His lawyers are talking deal. Reduced sentence in exchange for names. Turns out he wasn't working alone. There are legislators, military brass, even someone in the State Department who knew about the network and used it for their own purposes. How far up does it go? To the top, almost. The president had no knowledge, but the previous administration. Let's say there are some questions being asked. Scott shook his head. How long has this been going on? Since the Cold War, near as we can tell. Started as a legitimate operation, turning Soviet intelligence assets, using them against Moscow. But over time it evolved. The assets became double agents, then triple agents. They worked for us, for Moscow, for whoever paid the most. And Alexander saw an opportunity to build his own empire. And my brother got caught in the machinery. Your brother and hundreds of others over the years. We're still finding bodies, Scott. Still uncovering operations. This is going to take years to fully unravel. What about me? What do I get to walk away from this? Peter sighed. That's complicated. Officially, you were working under my direction to expose the network. That story holds up legally. But there are people who know the truth, who know you went on a revenge killing spree. They're going to make noise, call for your prosecution. And honestly, they're not wrong. So I'm going to prison after all. Maybe. Or maybe you disappear. New identity, new life, somewhere far from here. It's been done before. Scott looked out the window at the Virginia countryside. Disappear. Become someone else, somewhere else. Leave Scott Cunningham behind like a discarded cover identity. And if I don't want to disappear, if I want to face what I did, then you're looking at a trial, probably a conviction. Even with the national security angle, you killed 6 people. That's hard to excuse, even with Alexander's crimes as context. Scott thought about Kevin, about the life his brother had built through simple decency and hard work, about the example Kevin had set, living openly, honestly, facing consequences rather than hiding from them. Set up the trial. I'll plead guilty, accept responsibility. No deals, no excuses. Just the truth. Peter stared at him. You're sure? This could mean life in prison. I'm sure. Kevin deserves that much. His family deserves it. Hell, maybe I deserve it too. Scott, I'm not running anymore. Peter, not from this. Set it up. The trial was held in a federal courthouse in Detroit, where the murders had occurred. The prosecution argued Scott Cunningham had committed premeditated murder, had executed 6 men in cold blood, regardless of their crimes. The defense argued he'd been acting as an intelligence operative, conducting a sanctioned mission to expose a national security threat. Scott took the stand and told the truth. He'd killed those men for revenge, not for his country. Yes, they'd been foreign intelligence assets. Yes, his actions had helped expose Alexander's network. But he'd done it because they'd murdered his brother, and he'd wanted them dead. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Guilty on 6 counts of manslaughter. Not guilty on murder. The jury believed his actions, while illegal, lacked the malice of forethought required for murder. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison, eligible for parole in 7. Given the circumstances, the death of his family, the conspiracy he'd exposed, it was lenient. It was also appropriate. Scott had taken 6 lives, and now he'd pay with years of his own. He was led from the courtroom in chains, past reporters shouting questions, past protesters calling him both hero and murderer. He saw Jennifer in the crowd, her face unreadable. Their eyes met for a moment, and then she turned away. Les Stafford was waiting in the transport van. He'd taken a deal, immunity in exchange for testimony. He'd walk free while Scott went to prison. I'm sorry, Stafford said. Don't be. You did what you had to do. We both did. What you said in there about revenge, that took guts. Easier to hide behind the mission. Claim you were just following orders. Kevin was a better man than me. He wouldn't have hidden for what he'd done. Least I can do is follow his example now. The van pulled away, taking Scott to the first of many federal facilities he'd call home. As Detroit disappeared behind him, he thought about what came next. Years in a cell, time to think about what he'd done and what it meant. But he also thought about Alexander, facing trial for far worse crimes. About a network dismantled, a shadow empire brought to light. About justice, imperfect and incomplete, but real nonetheless. Kevin's death wouldn't bring down a corrupt system, but maybe his brother's revenge had started something. Maybe the exposure of Alexander's crimes would lead to real reform, real accountability. Or maybe it wouldn't. Maybe the system would simply adapt, find new ways to hide its sins. Either way, Scott had done what he'd set out to do. The men who killed his family were dead or imprisoned. The conspiracy that had enabled them was exposed. It wasn't peace. Peter had been right about that. But it was something. It was enough. Chapter 9. Resolution. 3 years into his sentence, Scott received a visitor. He'd had few over the years. Peter Gross came occasionally, updating him on the continuing fallout from Alexander's trial. Les Stafford had visited once, awkward and apologetic, before disappearing into whatever new life he'd built. Jennifer had never come, and Scott didn't blame her. But this visitor was unexpected. Senator Kirsten McGuire herself, looking older than her televised appearances suggested. "Mr. Cunningham," she said, sitting across from him in the visitor's room. "I wanted to thank you." "For what? Going to prison?" "For having the courage to expose something that needed to be exposed, regardless of the cost to yourself." She slid a folder across the table. "Alexander was convicted on 83 counts. He'll die in prison. 47 others received significant sentences. We've dismantled the network, implemented new oversight, created safeguards that should, hopefully, prevent this from happening again." "Should?" She smiled sadly. "Nothing's perfect, but it's better than it was. And that's largely because of what you did. Yes, you killed people. Yes, you broke the law. But you also shone a light on something that had festered in the shadows for decades. That counts for something. Tell that to the families of the men I killed. Most of them were murderers and traitors. Their families are better off without them." She tapped the folder. "This is a petition for commutation of your sentence. It's been signed by the Attorney General, the Director of National Intelligence, and myself. The President is considering it." Scott opened the folder, scanned the document. "Why?" "Because you've served enough time. Because your actions, while criminal, serve a greater good. Because keeping you in prison serves no purpose except punishment, and I think you've punished yourself more than we ever could. The families of the men I killed have been compensated from a forfeiture of Alexander's assets. They know what their loved ones were, what they'd done. Most of them understand, even if they can't forgive." Scott closed the folder. "I appreciate the gesture, Senator, but I'm not sure I deserve it." "Perhaps not, but your brother's children deserve to grow up with their father. Your sister-in-law deserved to grow old with her husband. We can't give them that, but we can give you a chance to live the rest of your life, to maybe do some good to balance the scales." She stood. "Think about it. The petition is there if you want it. If not, you serve out your sentence, and we respect that choice." She left, and Scott sat with the folder for a long time. 6 months later, the president commuted his sentence to time served. Scott walked out of federal prison into a cold December morning, free for the first time in 3.5 years. Peter Gross was waiting with a car. "Welcome back. Am I back? Or am I someone else now?" "That's up to you. We can set you up with a new identity, new location. Or you could try to rebuild your old life. Limited options, given your record, but it's possible." Scott got in the car, watched the prison disappear in the side mirror. "What happened to Stafford?" "Last I heard, he was teaching counterintelligence at Quantico. Turns out he's good at it. And the network? Any remnants? We're still hunting stragglers. The main structure is gone, but there are always loose ends. Always another shadow to chase." Peter glanced at him. "You interested in helping? Your knowledge of the network combined with your, particular skill set. There's work for you if you want it." Scott shook his head. "I'm done with that life. Done with shadows and secrets and justifying murder in the name of national security." "So what then?" "I don't know yet. Something simple. Something honest." He thought of Kevin, of the life his brother had built teaching history to teenagers. "Maybe I'll teach. Lord knows I've got stories to tell." Peter laughed. "Somehow I don't think how I killed 6 men and brought down a deputy director is in the standard curriculum." "No, but maybe something about the cost of secrets. About what happens when institutions lose their way. About accountability." Scott watched the landscape roll past, familiar and foreign all at once. Kevin used to say history was about learning from mistakes so we don't repeat them. Maybe that's something worth teaching. Peter dropped him at a halfway house in Alexandria, gave him a phone number to call if he needed anything. Scott stood on the sidewalk, a free man with nowhere to go and nothing to his name but the clothes on his back and a past he couldn't escape. He walked. No destination, just movement. Found himself eventually at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, running his fingers over names carved in black stone. All these lives given in service of something they believed in. Had they known the truth? Had they understood the complicated, murky reality of the machinery they served? Did it matter? Scott. He turned. Jennifer stood 20 feet away, looking uncertain. "I saw the news," she said, "about your release. I wasn't sure if you want to see me, but I thought," she trailed off. "You thought what?" "I thought maybe we could talk. Really talk, without lies or secrets or lawyers between us." They found a bench, sat with careful distance between them. Jennifer looked good, healthier than when he'd last seen her. Some peace returned to her features. "I'm going to therapy," she said, dealing with everything that happened. "The therapist asked me what I wanted, and I realized I didn't know. I'd spent so much energy being angry at you, at the situation, that I'd forgotten to think about what comes next." "And what has come next?" "I don't know, but I know I don't hate you anymore. I understand why you did what you did. I even understand why you had to face the consequences. That took courage. Or stupidity. Maybe both." She smiled slightly. "The divorce went through. I'm not asking to undo that. I'm not sure we could, even if we wanted to. Too much has happened. Then why are you here?" "Because you're still the person I loved for 15 years. Underneath all the secrets and the violence and the darkness, there's someone worth knowing. And I thought maybe someday, when you figure out who you are now, we could be friends. Not husband and wife, but something." Scott felt something ease in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying for years. "I'd like that." They talked for an hour, carefully navigating the minefield of their shared past. Jennifer told him about her new job, her sister's family, the small details of a life rebuilt. Scott told her about prison, about the time to think, and the slow work of forgiving himself. "Will you stay in the area?" she asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to run as far from D.C. as possible, but another part thinks I need to stay to face this place and what happened here." He looked at the memorial at all those names. Kevin used to bring his classes here. Said it was important to remember, even when remembering hurt. "That sounds like Kevin." "Yeah." Scott stood, offered his hand. "Thank you for coming. For giving me a chance to, I don't know, not fix things exactly, but maybe understand them better." Jennifer took his hand, shook it. "Take care of yourself, Scott. Figure out who you want to be. And maybe, when you do, give me a call. We'll get coffee." She left, and Scott was alone again. But it felt different now. Not the crushing isolation of prison or the empty freedom of a man with nothing to lose. It felt like possibility. He pulled out his phone, called Peter Gross. "I've been thinking about your offer. Not the field work, but maybe something advisory. Help train new operatives in recognizing when the mission crosses the line. When loyalty to the agency conflicts with loyalty to something bigger. That could work. When do you want to start?" "Give me a month. I've got some things to do first." Scott hung up, started walking. He found his way to a library, sat down at a computer, and started writing. Not a report, not a debriefing, a letter. To Kevin, to Monica, to Emma, and Lucas. An accounting of what he'd done, why he'd done it, and what it had cost. He'd never send it, of course. But writing it felt necessary, a way to close one chapter before beginning another. When he finished, he sat back and looked at the words on the screen. It wasn't redemption. He wasn't sure that was possible. It wasn't forgiveness. He didn't deserve that. But it was acknowledgement. It was truth. And maybe, just maybe, it was enough to start building something new from the ruins of what he destroyed. Scott saved the file, logged out, and walked into the late afternoon sun. Somewhere in the city, people were living their lives, teaching classes, raising children, building futures. Somewhere, the machinery of government ground on, secrets kept, and lies told in the name of security. But for now, Scott Cunningham was just a man walking through his city, carrying his past, but no longer crushed by it. He'd killed 6 men and brought down a corrupt empire. He destroyed his life and maybe, possibly, saved countless others. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was an ending, and that was enough. Tomorrow, he'd figure out the beginning. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.